So, I bet you want to know what content your website users are most interested in, right? Well, of course you do. Me too. I mean, if your situation is anything like mine, you likely have very little time to spend on actual useful things, like making your content easier to find, read, and understand. So when you do get this time, you want to make sure you're prioritizing the right content, not the stuff nobody really cares about. But here's the problem. Not only are you likely to have vast amounts of content on your site to track as it is, no doubt more and more is being added all the time, and more 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 and more, you know what I mean. So volumes are unmanageably high, and yes, I mean unmanageably. There are very few web teams that could, hand on heart, say they're managing. I mean, we're not managing, we're coping. So not only all that, but the basic metric of content engagement, views per page, is at best highly suspect for tracking user interests across an entire website, and at worst it's misleading and often meaningless. I've written about this at length on my website. Just consider all the different types of web pages you have on your site. Think about how varied they are in length, scope, density, and any other aspect of content design. Probably you have some that are short, highly targeted and well organized, and many others that are extremely long and loosely structured, covering many different subjects all in one place. I mean, the reality of this is that there's no such thing as a standard web page, so trying to compare or rank them all across an entire site is just wrong and will lead to bad decisions. You can make far better decisions by ditching pages and views and tracking user interest based on visits to content topics. So a content topic is a set of pages that encompass some discrete subject matter or other criteria that's of interest to you. And how you organize them is also down to you. For example, you might define a topic, Brexit, for all the pages on your site about the UK's exit from the EU. Importantly, these pages don't need to be located in a single place in your site's information architecture. They can be anywhere across your entire site. All that matters is that they concern the same subject or division of content you're interested in tracking as regards users' interests. Measuring content in this aggregated way instead of using individual pages means you don't have to worry whether one topic has 25 short pages or another just one long page, or indeed any other difference in length, scope, volume, density, etc., etc. This is because you're no longer tracking user interests based on how many times they look at pages, only how they engage with the high-level topics based on visits. This flattens issues caused by varying numbers of pages per topic. The number of pages in each topic no longer matters. In a loose sense, every topic is treated as if it was a sort of a single page. This imposes an equality of measurement between each topic and allows us to make direct and valid comparisons for engagement at a cross-site level, and ultimately allows us to identify and rank in the most accurate way possible the content that is of most interest to your users. As we'll see in a little while, this data is captured by the Advanced Content Groups feature in Google Analytics. As you can probably guess, this data is incredibly powerful and could allow you to see, perhaps for the first time, the topics your users are and are not actually interested in. I mean, if your experience is anything like mine, you may find that quite a small number of topics attract the overwhelming amount of your users' attention. For instance, maybe just a fifth or a quarter of your content topics account for over 80% of activity. Obviously, this is very significant. It essentially means that 3/4 of your content is of little or no interest to your users. And for a team with very limited manpower, this is fantastically useful. It means you now know exactly where not to spend any of your limited resources for UX or other improvements. Apart from basic QA, you can effectively ignore that content with little or no impact on the majority of user engagements. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, it would be wonderful to be able to improve all the content on our websites. But the simple truth is that, absent a radical and transformational change in how web teams are resourced, you simply do not have the manpower, skills, or time to justify it. Not only would improving this long tail of content demand massive effort, the marginal benefit would be vanishingly small. Only a tiny number of engagements will actually benefit. And on a limited web team, it seems crazy to me to spend your resources on content that gets the least engagement. All effort must go into the top content topics first. Only if and when they are as good as they can possibly be should secondary content be considered. So look, that's the context for measuring cross-site activity using content topics. And again, you can read more about the rationale on my website. But now we're going to get practical. First, we're going to explore how to build your topics by creating a taxonomy for your content. Then we'll look at how to set up the topics as content groups in Google Analytics. After that, we'll look at how to import the resulting data from GA into a custom spreadsheet I developed. And finally, we'll see the ranking of content topics emerge as both figures and charts. You can see an example of my spreadsheet on screen. The reason we need to import the data into the old webmaster's friend Excel is that as good and all as GA is, the level of analysis it provides is not adequate to analyze the data about content topics we need to accurately identify and track real users' interests. By pulling the data into Excel, the spreadsheet allows us to see in a simple, robust and visual way the topics that are of most and least interest to users, and thus highlight what you need to prioritize for attention and also to ignore. The spreadsheet achieves this by combining two numbers, visits per topic per day and the average count of pages visited per topic per day. The basic rule of thumb is that priority should go to content topics with a high average number of visits and a low average count of pages visited per day. Or to combine those numbers, topics with a high average number of visits per page per day. Improvements to those topics will benefit the maximum number of engagements at the lowest cost for you, simply because improving topics with a small number of pages generally takes far less effort than those with a lot of pages. It's really a no-brainer. And for websites that may have scores or hundreds of content topics, like the sample spreadsheet on screen, this type of data is pure magic, or at least it has been for me. So feel free to download the spreadsheet and reuse or amend it as you see fit. I'm interested to see what extensions you might come up with. Yes, there's a fair bit of work involved, but it's something I found to be really worthwhile doing. There are 3 sheets in the file, and it includes all the active formulae and other elements you need. The first 2 sheets are examples related to my own website, diffley.com. The first illustrates my taxonomy of content topics and the regular expressions or regex queries I use for my site in Google Analytics. The second sheet is where I record the output data and see the results. The third sheet then is essentially the same as the second sheet, but has been loaded with lots of extra dummy topics and data to show what the output for an enterprise scale website would look like. So keep watching in my second video where I describe in detail the steps you need to follow to get going. Thanks for watching.